This is the Decoding Obesity podcast, where we simplify, demystify, and decode obesity, helping you lose weight and feel great. So gear up for a fascinating journey through this ever-evolving field, and let's see what we find. And please remember that the thoughts and opinions on this podcast do not constitute medical advice. Don't forget to visit our website, www.decodingobesity.com, for show notes and more info. And now, here's your host of the Decoding Obesity podcast, Dr. Avishkar Sabharwal.
Hi friend, welcome again to another episode of Decoding Obesity. I have come across a lot of online weight loss programs over the years and have always wondered how good or bad are they. Some of the claims they make certainly seem too good to be true. So I wondered, is there any data to support their role in obesity management? Now, I met Dr. Heather Hammerstedt recently. She's a board-certified physician in emergency medicine and lifestyle medicine, and she has an online program called Wholist. I'm going to let her introduce herself on the show, and then we're going to dive into kind of understanding what's the data behind all of this, online weight loss programs and what she does and what prompted her to start this. So let's welcome Dr. Heather Hammerstedt.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, so I am emergency medicine physician. I've been practicing for about 16 years. I'm here in Boise, Idaho, and I have been actually a health coach for as long as I've been a doctor. I went and got my coaching certificate when I was still in medical school because I realized, I had walked into medical school like clutching my Healing with Whole Foods book and was like sure that I was going to learn about nutrition and movement and how our brains worked, and we didn't learn any of that. So I went and kind of tried to get that information on my own. And it's kind of come all full circle at this point. And I became certified in lifestyle medicine, which, if the listeners don't know, is basically a relatively new specialty of using the evidence behind food and sleep and exercise and mindfulness for the prevention and reversal of disease. And started Wholist 3.5 years, almost 4 years ago, really with the goal of how can I help people understand how their brains and bodies work around health behavior changes, whether that's related to food or movement or taking their medicines or whatever it is. How do we actually function that we can make sustainable health changes, and approaching that as, a whole person approach, which is the pun of Wholist, right? It's right. Gastroenterologist, hospitalist, but talking about the whole person. So that's me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that you went to medical school thinking you learn about nutrition and this and that, because, my journey is kind of similar. I actually have been suffering from obesity. The way I put it is that it's in remission now. But so during my residency, actually, I was at the highest weight, and I have trained in both, in India and over here in the US. And none of the places actually trained me in obesity medicine per se, like the specialty obesity medicine. And so I stumbled upon obesity medicine as a specialty, and that's when I learned really the science behind obesity. And it's very surprising that we do not learn about this in our medical school or in our residencies, even though it's such a big problem in this, in this world. The management of obesity is so important now because it's almost like a pandemic now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it might be getting a little bit better in medical education. I think that there's a little bit more of a focus on some of that, at least from some of the students that I've talked to recently. So that's making me happy because I think we all need this information. I mean, not even just as physicians, just as people, we need to understand kind of how our bodies work and how we're fueling it and how movement affects that. And, obesity is a disease, and it's something that's reversible, just like, diabetes and high blood pressure are for a lot of people. And I think we need to approach it that way, is really understanding, how it works and how our behavior affects that.
Right. So, coming to this question, of course, we're discussing about online weight loss programs. What is your opinion, or let me say, what prompted you to start Wholist as an online platform rather than, the traditional one-to-one approach that we have, or the traditional clinic approach that we have to management of, say, weight loss or lifestyle change? Because you're primarily dealing with a lot of stuff, right? Not just obesity.
Right. So I guess there's two views of it. First is I wanted to reach more people, and you can do that online. I'm not just limited to who can come see me in an office or, who lives in my town. It also let me hire coaches who are all over the place as well. So it allows scalability of the company, again, to reach more people. But also, I mean, I just sort of intuitively knew when I started this that like the world is shifting this way. And personally, very selfishly, I don't want just my time being the business, right? And so if I can create a company that can serve more people and can also run without me, that's kind of win-win.
That's true. And I mean, COVID has definitely shown us that, the importance of online presence and the importance of virtual meets that we have, and that the world can run actually that way. So that's definitely there. But what do you think is essential, in terms of the various online programs that are available, sort of to provide value to the people that they're serving?
Well, there is just a whole span of offerings out there. And I'm biased, obviously, because the Wholist approach came from my brain and my soul, right? But I think that, there's everything from, just using an app on your phone to track your calories and your calories in, calories out, very simplified approach, which can work for some people for a short period of time. And then there's kind of the middle of the road kind of programs where they do provide some sort of, whether it's AI sort of support in quotes, that helps you kind of and guides you and gives you some education. What's different about what we do is that we're like very personal. So while it's online, meaning that you get your education, by text or on the web portal, to walk you through everything you need to learn about how your brain and your body work around these topics. But you have a real person, or in some cases, some of our services, you have two coaches, one for food and the other one for mindset and neuroplasticity work. And it's very deep and very personal because we all understand that this is not like obesity is not about food and it's not about willpower. It's about what are the other pillars in your life that are holding you up, right? What's your relationships? What are your behavior activities? What is work like? What is, your movement like? What is your mind like? What are your hormones like, right? It's like all just this big, they all work together. And I don't think that you can have success with just concentrating on one of those pillars.
I think that's very true. Yeah, I think that's very important because, you have to have a multifaceted approach to this. And the fact that you have people working one-on-one with people, despite it being a virtual platform, essentially is kind of like, being in an office, but in a virtual setting,
totally.
Wherein you're still kind of reaching out to people. And that also highlights the fact that, we still need that interpersonal interaction, so to say, to actually have that, long-term effect.
Someone in your corner. Yeah.
Right. And, interestingly, I did come across some studies that do point out that there is definitely, validity to online weight loss programs that are out there in terms of, sustained changes. And there are certain companies that are definitely coming up now for this in the virtual space, which is also very interesting. But what do you think sets Wholist apart from all the other programs that are out there?
Well, because we're not like talking about restriction and tracking, and there's no blame or shame. Like we're trying to do is like, this is how your brain works. This is how your body works. This is your life. How can we adjust to the lifestyle that you're doing that feels sustainable, feels doable? You're not feeling like you're restricted, because we all know once you restrict, like we're all rebel, right? That's just the next movement. And really kind of getting into like, how can you adapt your biology to change those hormones that we know are so essential to all of this? How can you kind of flex the muscle of your brain in a different way that you are able to make sustainable health changes? And so we're not talking about food all the time. You think that we're talking about, I hate calling us a weight loss company. I like to talk about weight wellness, right, and lifestyle modification, but we're not talking about food like 90% of the time.
No, that's important to know because food is a part of the whole approach. It's not the only thing, even though it's an important thing, but there are important aspects that need to be addressed. You've been an emergency medicine physician for so long, right? Yeah. So what prompted you to start this 3 years ago?
Well, like I said, I went to health coaching school to become integrative nutrition coach when I was still in medical school. So that was 2003. It's always been a part of me, and it's always been something that I spend time with my patients, even if it's just 30 to 60 seconds, like talking to them about these sort of things. And it got to, I spent the first part of your career is so concentrated on like, am I doing everything right? Am I finishing the charts? Am I saving people's lives? Am I communicating correctly? Like, how's my relationship with the nurses and the administration? Where is my place in my career, right? And then I'm mid-career at this point. Well, maybe past that, who knows? And it got to the point where I was like, I have all these other things that I've put my hands up over the years, right? Like health coaching. I did a year of medical acupuncture training. I spent some time in India studying Ayurveda. And it was like all these things that I was like, I could put this into a package some way that could help a lot of people that's not 3 a.m. with their chest pain, right? That it's like, let's make like a big change that maybe they don't need to see me in 5 to 10 years at 3 o'clock in the morning with their chest pain. So, so that was my impetus. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think that kind of highlights how a lot of us are, right? We have a lot of different things that we do, and kind of putting all of this together to create something like Wholist that you did is very fascinating. Tell us about some of your successes that you've had in terms of, your clients having success with your company working with you.
Yeah. So I would say on average, most people, we don't take everyone into the program. We interview everyone first.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. We make sure that they're like ready to act and like the right fit, because, like I want them to succeed, but I also don't want someone to come in and use our time and not do anything, like not do the work. Right. So for that reason, we have a very high success rate because we don't let everybody in. So I would say the vast majority of people, when you're talking about just weight, which again is just a small portion of what we're doing here, is about 8 to 10% of body weight lost in the 12 weeks of our program. Most importantly, we like to work ourselves out of a job. And so most of those people after the 12 weeks, some people stay for kind of a momentum program, but the rest of them, like I know someone who worked with us a year and a half ago, and she has lost 80 pounds, and the vast majority of that after our program, continuing her lifestyle change, and has maintained that off. And I think that in itself just makes me like a proud mama, like,
yeah.
And again,
true.
It's not the weight. It's like, it's the fact that like she has created this lifestyle for herself where she has put in, removed the shame and blame, replaced it with self-love and mindful choices about how she wants to live her life. And that makes me really happy. Then there's tons of people who, have gotten themselves off of diabetes meds, off of insulin, off of some hypertension meds. And the non-scale victories make me even happier. People who quit their jobs and got better jobs because they realized that they were worth asking for what they are worth. People who've like gotten divorced.
Oh my God. That's very interesting.
Well, realizing, like seeing yourself and analyzing how your brain works and the things that you're telling yourself, when you realize that you're telling yourself things that you would never tell anybody else, and realizing how much you love yourself and how much value you have, you want the people around you to be also seeing that in you. And if they're not, do we need that relationship, setting boundaries in different ways?
Yeah, that's very interesting and I think that's very important too, because understanding how you can make sustainable lifestyle changes, especially when we talk about obesity, is really a very important aspect of the management. Because I know there are a ton of approaches available, and if somebody says, is this approach right or that approach right, I always say yes, both of them are right. Depends on what you want to do and what you're going to sustain. So basically it's about having those changes that are going to be sustainable towards a healthier lifestyle. And that's very important. And I'm sure that your clients at work, especially you mentioned about that person who lost 80 pounds after finishing the program and kind of sustaining those changes throughout the last 1.5 years, even after finishing the program, really talks about the fact that you need to make changes that are going to be sustainable and that are going to be kind of a part of your lifestyle and it cannot be exclusive of the way your day-to-day functioning. It has to be incorporated into your kind of work-life balance and, your family, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're right on in that like all diets work and all diets fail, right?
That is true.
So it's like, yes, like that will work. You can white knuckle yourself through any restriction, cleanse diet that you want to and lose weight. The question is like, how long is it going to be after you stop doing that you're going to gain it all back plus 5 pounds, right? That's the data of what happens with diets is gain it all back plus 5 pounds. So when it comes down to it is that like what I always tell people is like, if you don't want to work with us, that's fine. Like we have no lack of business, right? But what I want is I want to see people to to do something that incorporates all the other things that we know that's going into this. It's relationships, it's sleep, right? It's stress. It's, all those things that if you're not addressing those, like I said about those pillars of our health, if you're not addressing those other things, it's not going to be sustainable. It's just going to be a white knuckle, and you can't overpower your willpower, right? Like that's just not, like it's going to win. And so the changes have to be more than willpower.
That is true. So, this leads me to an interesting question. The plethora of programs that are available online, what should people actually watch out for? What should my listeners say somebody wants to join a program? And what should they be cautious of in terms of, searching and choosing a program?
So again, obviously I'm biased because I think what we do is kind of the best standard approach, but I feel really wary of people choosing to do something for the short term that they would never do for the long term. So if you want to eat products, for your weight loss journey, like, are you going to do that when you're 80 years old, right? Are you going to do that when you're 60 years old? Are you going to do that in a year from now? And if the answer is yes, you can eat products or shakes or take pills forever, then I guess that's fine. That's your choice. What I think is the better approach is basically like, what are the choices that I need to make that make me happy and fulfilled and still getting to my goals? And that is neuroplasticity on how my brain is flexing about the choices that I'm making and what I'm telling myself that I'm worth fueling myself with and moving and concentrating on sleep and stress and all those things. If I can learn those skills, I always say this is skill power, not willpower. If I can learn the skills that I need to be able to be happy and sustain that when I'm 70, 80 years old, then I've won, right? You can get to a short-term goal with products and shakes and supplements, but is that really the goal? Is it really a number on the scale that you're trying to reach, or are you trying to get to your best brain and body that you can?
No, I think that's very important. And you raised a very valid point. Is it just about the number on the scale, or is it more than that? And that's certainly important to understand. So Heather, you'd also mentioned that, you don't take anybody and everybody who comes and, tries to join your program. So what do people need to do to join your program, or, at least get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, I'm very vocal on Facebook. And I'm easy to find because there aren't that many Hammerstedts out there. So people can just message me and I can set them up with call with one of our strategists. So basically we have a couple of people who work for Wholist whose only job is to take these calls and to kind of suss out exactly where people are, where their health journey has been, what their goals are, and figuring out whether we're the right fit for where they are. And we like to do that because, like I said, like we want people who are like ready. Like we want people who are like, yes, I'm hungry for the knowledge, I'm hungry for change, and I'm ready to act. And if those people get on the phone with us, we're just stoked because we can tailor all sorts of things for people, whether it's culinary strategy sessions or whether it's the full-blown, weight wellness mindset program, or whether it's a group program or fitness. We even have a new program now we're doing that's called mental fitness. And it's basically teaching people about kind of how to recognize their own saboteurs in their brain and in their personality, and how to kind of recognize that and then change the way that they're approaching situations. So all sorts of different options. And we don't know what's right for you unless we talk to you. There's no like cookie cutter. I don't want to just stick everybody into the same thing,
Interesting. So what do they get if they, join your full weight wellness program?
Yeah, the Weight Wellness Mindset Program is basically 12 weeks of daily education for me. It comes in podcast form, audio podcast of, how nutrition works, how your body works, how your brain is working in terms of decision-making, saboteurs, neuroplasticity, metacognition work around health change. They get that every day from me, both by text and email. And then we have a membership portal that you can sign into. I like to do it as convenient as possible like that because we're all crazy. Life is crazy, right? And then they get food coach and a mindset coach. And we choose those people for you based on, again, what your unique situation is, your personality and your needs. Those mindset coaches are anything from life coaches to hypnotherapy. And then our food coaches are doctors, nurses, dietitians as professional background who've also kind of gone through coaching work. And you meet with them throughout your 12 weeks and really dig in. And then we have a group aspect where, everybody can join a few group calls a month as well to kind of get that community feeling.
And I think that's very important too, because we've done an episode on, the importance of the social aspect of it and, the accountability that you get with it.
I think there needs to be a few different layers of support. I mean, the one-on-one support is super important. The people in your household being a support for the decision-making. The people who struggle are people who have someone at the table judging their choices, right? So it has
Right.
everybody has to be bought in for a household lifestyle change, so to speak. And then having that group component, I think, is really important because you're totally right. Walking the path, holding the hands of other people walking the path, and everyone's struggling with something a little bit different. And watching people kind of coach each other through those of things that I wouldn't have thought to say, having not been in that same experience. So I think the levels of support are really important.
Yeah, that's very important. Heather, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to your program and your website on my show notes, But listeners, if you want to reach out to Heather, you can go to www.wholisthealth.com. That is WHOLISTHEALTH.com. And FYI, this is not a sponsored episode. I really appreciate the work that Heather does, and that's why I decided to bring her on. I do not want you all to feel that I've been sponsored by her or by her program. I think it's very important. I think the importance of having sustainable change is the key to kind of having those healthy lifestyle changes that you need. And that's why I brought her on. So I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining me. And thank you everyone for joining in. I'll see you all next time.
You've been listening to the Decoding Obesity podcast. Please remember, the information in this podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the host and his guests and do not constitute medical advice. Views and opinions on this show do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of any organization. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening in. Don't forget to visit our website, www.decodingobesity.com, for show notes and more info. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Until next time.